Welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
We have allowed ourselves to become so disconnected and ignorant about something that is as intimate as the food that we eat.
Be prepared to grow your own for victory.
God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-foamed pullets who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. This is episode 119, April 7th, 2019. And today I'm joined by homesteader and blogger Ashley Dempster of Townhouse Homestead as we discuss the many things she's doing to homestead, even though she has very little space. I got to tell you guys, I'm kind of excited about this one. I always enjoy when I get to talk to somebody who just doesn't make excuses about their situation, not having an ideal setup, and they just say, I'm going to do this thing no matter what. And Ashley is that kind of person, so I'm excited to let you listen to our conversation. Before we jump into that, though, let's have a few homestead updates. What's going on at the small town homestead? Well, I decided to grow a SCOBY for kombucha as an experiment. Now, I already have SCOBYs, already have kombucha, but I get people asking me all the time, where do I get a SCOBY so I can start making kombucha also. And, I always tell people, well, you can find a friend who's making kombucha and you can just get one from them because everybody who makes kombucha has extra SCOBYs, no doubt about it. Or you can buy one. You can purchase them online and they will send one to you. Because I had these same questions. I didn't know anybody that was making kombucha right around me when I first started doing it. And then I also tell people you can grow one. But I had never actually grown one from start to finish. So I decided to do that. And I found a bottle of organic kombucha in a convenience store. There's a truck stop convenience store. And I just brought it home. And I thought, well, if I put this in some black tea and with a couple cups of sugar and let it grow. And it did. Lo and behold, it grew, and it's a full-size SCOBY in about 2 weeks out of that. So if you can find a bottle of organic kombucha at a convenience store and put that in some black tea and a little bit of sugar to feed it, it'll grow. You will grow a SCOBY out of that. So that's what I did just for an experiment. And I'll be trying out and making a couple of batches with that, making sure it tastes as good. But so far, so good. It looks really, really good. Let's see what else we've been doing. Mulching flower beds, mulching pathways. Really, I actually got to spend a whole day working outside in the garden, doing garden prep and cleanup yesterday. That was enjoyable. It was really nice. Got a lot done around here. I also got to play Where's Waldo with the quail because I left the cage door open and went to work one day. So I come home in the evening and go out there to check on all the animals. And there's a couple quail in the cage, but there's some missing. So I had to go lurk. Those things can find places to hide where you just don't think they can find a place to hide. I mean, they're behind stuff and in the middle of stuff and up on top of stuff and everywhere in there. But we got them all back in there. No harm, no foul. But that was interesting. And I also had my grandson out there helping me get the eggs. And he had his jacket pockets full of eggs. And, of course, he's only 2, and he trips and falls and just crushes all the eggs in his pocket. So he had egg dripping out of his jacket pocket. And I was like, oh, that's nice. So, yeah, lots of fun. But again, it's all good. I just, it's so great to get out here and spend some time just working in the garden and doing homesteading things. It's just a great, great time. Let's do a In the News segment today. Basically, my In the News segment is telling you about another In the News segment that you should check out. And it's actually an article that somebody's writing every week. Tom and Julie over at Small Scale Life are writing an article on their website, smallscalelife.com, called News from Around the Bend. And it's really, really good. And we've been in that. He's featured us in there a couple times. And he's just going around, he's collecting, the best podcasts, the best articles, the stuff he can find. And he's putting it in this article. he's putting out every week. It's really good. You ought to go over to smallscalelife.com, check it out. I've been enjoying reading it and letting him do the digging for me to find all the great stuff out there. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes if you want to click on that and head over there. Well, let's just jump right into our main topic today. It's a great one, and that's Townhouse Homesteading with guest Ashley Dempster. Now, Ashley lives in Calgary, Canada with her fiance, and they homestead in a urban townhouse. She's got a tiny front yard, tiny backyard, and she blogs about her journey at townhousehomestead.com. And we're going to talk about all kinds of great stuff. So let's just jump right into that conversation with Ashley. Well, Ashley, welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Harold. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. I've been watching what you're doing for a little while, and kind of, I don't know, probably the last year or so at least, I've seen you build a blog and some of the things you're doing in real small, limited spaces. And I get excited about that kind of stuff. I really do, because I see so many people who have so many excuses about why they can't homestead, rather, where they're at and do the things they want to do. And then I see somebody like you come along and say, I ain't going to make no excuses. I'm just going to do it.
Absolutely. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah,
No excuses.
So, well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into homesteading?
Yeah. So my name is Ashley Dempster, and I'm 27 years old. I live in Alberta, Canada. So here it is very much still winter right now. And about 3 years ago, my boyfriend and I bought our first home, which is a small townhouse in Calgary. And for those who may not know, a townhouse here means that we're connected to other homes. So there's 5 of us in one block, and we're all quite small. I think our house is around 1,300 square feet. And our yards are approximately 450 square feet. So I did the math this morning, and that is 0.01 of an acre that I'm gardening in. So not a lot of space, but a couple of years ago, unfortunately, my father actually passed away quite young. He was 54, and just a result of poor life choices and poor health and all of that kind of stuff. And that's what really got me interested in learning a bit more about where our food comes from and taking a bit more responsibility for what I was feeding myself and my boyfriend. And so I decided I was going to start gardening in whatever form that would look like. And at the time, it was just a little pot of microgreens on the windowsill, and I was absolutely hooked. And from there, it's just kind of built and grown. And actually finding your podcast 3 years ago was what initially got me started. So it's super cool to be talking to you today.
Oh, wow. Well, I've heard you say that before, and I'm honored.
Yeah.
And, that's why I do it. I've always, I hope, anyway, when I do this, that it inspires some people to, take some responsibility for what they're eating. And even if they don't do all the things to call themselves a homesteader, at least, know where their food's coming from, take some responsibility on that, and just get in the movement a little bit and understand a little bit more about it. So, so they can, just realize what they're putting in their body. So I'm glad to hear that that's made a difference in your life. Well, you're gardening. Now, what kind of gardening are you doing?
So we do a variety of things. Gardening is kind of how the whole homesteading journey started. We've gotten into a lot of other things since then. But our garden, we grow mostly in containers and raised beds in the backyard and a little bit in the front yard as well. But all through the winter, because here in Alberta, Canada, we have about 6 months of really, really cold winter where absolutely nothing grows outside.
Right.
So we've kind of taken it upon ourselves to start doing some indoor growing as well. So we dabble in small hydroponic systems, growing things like tomatoes and peppers and greens and herbs and all that all year long. And also a little bit of indoor soil growing as well. But with our limited space, it's kind of tough to grow anything too large in soil indoors. So mostly we stick to the hydroponics and the raised beds. Doing
tomatoes in hydroponics and in the house?
Yeah, little ones, little cherry tomatoes.
Cherry tomatoes, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, we're growing, right now we're growing bok choy, and we've got some little mini bell peppers growing as well, and some mini eggplants too.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty crazy what you can do. Science is on our side when it comes to that stuff, for sure.
Sure. So outdoor gardening, how many raised beds do you have?
It's a mishmash. I'm just looking back there right now. We've got, they're not very big. Like my boyfriend built me this kind of like 3-tier raised bed in the corner. We also get very limited sun in our backyard because we're north facing. So yeah, it's just kind of like, I've got photos of it on my Instagram, but I wouldn't I actually don't know like how much like square foot growing space we actually have, but it's not much. It's pretty much large pots and very small raised beds.
So most of your growing does happen in the house then.
Yeah, during the winter for sure. But I'd say like in the summer we grow a pretty significant amount outdoors. We've actually been challenging ourselves over the past year to eat one meal a week that is entirely self-sustained. So whether that's, stuff we've grown, stuff that Sean has fished, bread that we've baked ourselves, all of that. Yeah. And it's been really interesting to see what we've been able to come up with, even having very little space. Like you said before, there really is no excuse. Like, it takes getting creative. It takes for us to maximizing our space, growing vertically where we can, and just really trying to fit in as much as we possibly can.
Okay, great. Well, let's talk about some of the other things you're doing. So you're gardening, but I heard you mention fishing in there. So you're catching some fish, and that's, you consider that part of, being responsible about what you're eating and bringing into your homestead there. So you do that quite a bit.
Yeah, that's definitely more Sean's forte. I fish every now and then, but I'm not nearly as good at it or as excited about it as he is. And here in Canada, we have the opportunity to ice fish a lot through the winter as well. So that's something we can do all year long. And we probably eat fresh fish that he's caught probably about once a week all year long. Awesome. So that's definitely helpful. And then, there is the opportunity to hunt here as well. We haven't really gotten into that yet, but that is something that we hope to do in the future.
Sure.
And in our city, unfortunately, we're one of those cities that doesn't allow chickens or quail. I looked into the Coturnix quail after I heard you talking about them on the podcast a little while ago, and turns out those are banned as well.
Oh, well.
I just think is a little bit silly. So, we're limited by that, but you just do what you can, and like I said, you just got to get creative sometimes.
Yeah, I love your attitude about that. Now, I've pointed out many times that homesteading, a lot of it takes place in the kitchen, sometimes you just move into there. What kind of things are you doing there?
So cooking is probably my life's greatest passion. I grew up with two parents who both loved to cook, and I grew up eating very crazy, exotic, weird things at a very young age because they were constantly experimenting in the kitchen, and that was kind of instilled in me the older I got. And so cooking's a big part of it, cooking from scratch. I've recently really started to enjoy baking my own bread and even grinding my own grain. We can't grow grain, obviously, in our small space, but stuff that I can buy locally, and a lot of preserving as well, like just learning to live a little bit more like seasonal, right, as well. And we're lucky we do live close to lots of different farms. So in the summer, I can go out and I can buy an abundance of local organic produce and then preserve it and put it up myself, whether that's through canning or dehydrating or even just freezing or, batch cooking different soups and meals. And it's just I think it's a matter of educating yourself as well. Yeah. Like when you live in a big city, like we do, like we live in Calgary, Alberta, which is well over 1 million people. And it's so easy to think in that metropolitan area that there is no opportunity to go out and, meet your farmer and get to know where your food comes from. But, all you have to do is hop on, local Facebook groups, or even sometimes on, if you just kind of Google like farms in my area, you'd be surprised what you can find. And a lot of times you're going to find that there's a lot more than you thought there was, like right outside your doorstep. You just have to go find it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you feel like that's a pretty important thing for folks to do, is to get out and meet their farmers and find out exactly where the food's coming from then, huh? Yeah.
Absolutely. They feed us. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's great. So you're doing a lot of preserving too then. So you're getting this food and you're getting in there and canning and dehydrating and all that. Yeah,
learning lots.
How did you start learning that? You just internet or books or?
Yeah, well, Teresa Lowe, her podcast, I know you've referenced that many times before, and listening to her, what is it, Living Homegrown, right? That's what it's called, I believe. Listening to her podcast was what really got me interested in trying to live a little bit more like seasonally and preserving in different ways, right? Like canning, I'll be honest, at the beginning it freaked me out a little bit. Just because, you of course hear of, that one person like 10 years ago who got botulism from, the home canned tomatoes and all that stuff. So that did definitely kind of freak me out in the beginning. But I find as long as you educate yourself and make sure that you're following the rules properly and, you're using good like recipes and all of that, it is a lot less scary. But if canning freaks people out, then I always just tell them, okay, then just start with learning how to properly freeze seasonal vegetables, learning how to dehydrate. You can buy a dehydrator for $200 and you're good to go for several years if you treat it right.
Right.
And that's a huge thing too. Like we dehydrate a ton of food.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up, my parents could can, but honestly, we didn't can a lot. But we had a couple big freezers, and we froze a lot of stuff. We blanched and froze a lot of vegetables, and did a lot of that, and that's how we preserved a lot of our food when I was a kid. Yeah. So, it's definitely a way to do it. It's a safe way to do it. It's simple, and if you don't mind spending electricity on the freezers, I mean, it's a very good way to do it. Absolutely.
And people are less afraid of it too, I think, because it's familiar, right? Like I did not grow up in a house where we canned or preserved at all, but we always had food in the freezer. So for me, it just felt like a safer barrier to entry to the whole. Yeah,
it's kind of where realm. I started to. It was just something we knew how to do, and it was just easy, and you just do it. And you know what? I tell people that too. It's like if you're afraid to do this or you don't want to do that, to be a homesteader, you don't have to. There's so many things you can do. In it that you don't have to do everything. And and you're a perfect example of that. I mean, there's a lot you can't do and probably a lot you don't want to do, but there's so much you can do right where you're at.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, you might try something and find you don't like it too, and that's okay, but at least you tried.
Yeah. Well,
there's a lot of different things.
Yeah. Well, being in your where you're located and stuff, are you able to get out and do some foraging and that too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's something that is still relatively new to us. We only really started kind of becoming interested in foraging last year. And that's another thing that, again, kind of is a little scary, right, for people who are unfamiliar with it. But, for us, we just found, okay, it's our first year. Let's focus on like 3 to 5 main things that we know exactly what they look like. We know that they grow around here. We know where they are. Let's just start there and ease our way into it so that we don't get sick or freak ourselves out or, have that I just ate this mushroom and I hope I'm going to be okay.
Right.
So again, like if it scares you, then just pick a couple things, and until you get comfortable with that, just stick with that. You're still doing something.
I love foraging, but there's a lot I still don't know about it that I don't feel safe about in foraging.
Yes, me
and,
too.
I'll go out and morel mushrooms are pretty big around where I live. Puffball mushrooms are pretty big. We'll go after those things. And then, I'll just get a lot of different kinds of berries. There's a lot of raspberries and blackberries and mulberries and things like that around here.
Absolutely.
Nut trees, things like that. I mean, there is so much you can do that's fairly familiar that you don't have to go after the stuff that you don't feel comfortable with. And foraging can be a huge part of supplying food for your homestead for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, we don't, it sounds amazing. You're like, oh, we've got morels and we've got berries. Like, I know we do too, but it's a lot harder to find around here.
Yeah.
So yeah, we focus on more kind of like greens and herbs and things like that.
Yeah.
But again, just start small. That's kind of my mentality with everything. And I mean, I have no choice because I'm in a small space, but if you start small, you're going to experience more success, I think, as well, because it's more focused. You're not trying to do 100 different things at once. You're focusing on 5 things at once, and you're going to have really good success with, 4 or 5 of those 5 things. And that's going to build your confidence. And then, next year, when next spring rolls around, you might want to focus on a few different things. And I think that's kind of the beauty of this whole thing, is that you can never possibly know it all. And there's always more to learn. And that's why the community is so great as well, because there's so many different people out there who just are a wealth of knowledge, and they just love to share.
Right.
The kind of community of people, the homesteaders, for sure.
Well, what other kind of things are you doing in small spaces that you can do as a homesteader there?
So I dabbled in something called button quail. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of doing my research, and I'm like, okay, Coturnix quail are not legal in Calgary, and then I'm at the pet store, and I see these little tiny birds, and I'm like, that looks like a quail. And it was a button quail, and I was like, well, if it's at the pet store, it must be fine. So I brought home a couple of those just to kind of experiment a little bit, and people online just thought that was hilarious. Somebody started calling them my apartment chickens. So I tried my best to embrace it, but honestly, that didn't work out very well for us. They drove our dog absolutely insane because we had to keep them in the house.
Yeah, right.
And they're, like you said, they are messy, those little guys.
Yes, they are.
Oh, my God. They just, like, throw stuff like no tomorrow.
Yep.
So we kept them for about 6 months, and they laid a couple eggs for us. But at the end of the day, we were like, this isn't really working for us, and it's making our dog psychotic. So I rehomed them to a lovely family not far from here. But other than that, like, I love to knit, so I'm trying to learn more about knitting and different needle crafts this year as well. Just another little facet of self-sufficiency. And
you know, so many people think of that as like a hobby too, rather than like a self-sufficiency skill, but it absolutely can be. I mean, especially what you're doing with that knowledge.
I mean, am I ever going to knit all my own clothes? Absolutely not. Right? But it's just another skill, you know, to build and to have in your repertoire, that it's nice to know that you can do things for yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And then also this year I want to get into making more like personal care products, you know, like lip balms and lotions and maybe soap, that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much most of what we do around here.
Yeah, it's just so much you can do. I hear all the things you're doing in such a small space, and you know, not being out in the country, and I'm going, yeah, just people don't have an excuse for not doing something if they want to. And and that's, here's the thing, you know, I've always just thought, you know, if you want it bad enough, you'll do it. And the people who say they want it and they're not doing anything, you know, I do have to question, do they really want it, or do they just want to talk about it and think about it? And, you know, just they enjoy the thought of thinking about it, you know, doing it one day, but if they really wanted it, they'd pursue some degree of it anyway, like you're doing. And
well,
I did that
mean,
too
it's
for
romantic.
years, so. Yeah.
It's romantic to think about, right? But not everybody wants to put in the work, which is fine. That's totally fine. Like, it is not cute when I am out in my PJs trying to cover up my plants in the winter because a hailstorm is rolling in.
Right.
Like, that's, you know, and it's not nice when your animals get sick. And like, there's a lot of things I know that are associated with this life that are not the romanticized kind of vision of it.
Right.
But like they say, you know, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way, and otherwise you'll find an excuse, right?
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about your blog for a minute. Now, you started blogging how long ago?
Oh, my goodness. Probably close to a year ago now. And it's just one of those things. I kind of have a bad habit of biting off like way more than I can chew in my life in every way. So I started my blog, and it started strong. I was like, oh, I've got all these ideas for posts. And I think to the day I've probably only written maybe like 4 or 5 blog posts, and it's been about a year. So I really do want to get better at that. But yeah, we've had a lot going on this past year. I started a business, and we got engaged, and it's just been a little bit crazy. So, the blog has kind of fallen by the wayside, but I do, plan to do a lot more with that. And
Well, you're pretty active, you know, on the blog side of it. Maybe you're not sharing a lot of posts, but you definitely are promoting that through Instagram and Facebook quite a bit. Yeah, you're there a lot.
Yeah, Instagram is like my micro blog. I post on there multiple times a day.
Yeah.
But you know, I do want to get more going with the blog, because I am so passionate about showing people that you can do so many things regardless of your circumstances.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. What was kind of the purpose of the blog? Was it just a hobby, or was you really wanting to just get a message out there that people could do things?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I follow girls on Instagram who are up in the Yukon territories here in Canada, like, you know, growing indoors all year. And it's just incredible what people can do if they really put their minds to it. And I mean, we live in a really interesting time because we are trying to pursue this more simple, self-sufficient life, but we also have technology on our side at the same time. So, you know, if your only option to grow food through the winter is to use a hydroponic system with an LED light, then that's what you do.
Yeah. Was that a pretty big learning process for you doing that?
For me, it wasn't too bad because at the moment, just because of our small space, we use the Aero Gardens. I don't know if you've heard of those.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, they're definitely like a smaller, it's very much like a plug-and-play system. There's not a whole lot of research required there. So they're great. They're great for like beginners. They're great for people who don't have a lot of room. If we had more space, like to dedicate like a full room of our house to growing, I would definitely want to look into building our own hydroponic systems. Or even potentially like get into aquaponics and that kind of stuff in the future. But for now, I mean, that's what we have to work with, and it works really well for us.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of your setup. It looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, Yeah, there's a lot going on. Our house basically like glows purple all through the night. I'm not sure what my neighbors think, but
yeah. Well, a system like that, you just basically, I mean, it has the lights built into it, right? And you just basically add water and some nitrates or whatever to the water.
Yeah, like liquid nutrients or whatever. There's a bunch of different ones on the market, but the light's on a timer. The pump is automatic. You just have to make sure, you're giving it its nutrients every 2 weeks. You're topping up the water every couple of days. And other than that, it is pretty hands-off.
Wow.
So it's not bad. It's not a bad little system for what it is, for sure.
Yeah,
I have 5, so obviously obviously I like them. I'm kind of a bit of a collector at this point.
Well, that's how you grow a lot of food in your house right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you got a lot going on, but something tells me you've got bigger plans in the future. What were you thinking on down the road? What's homesteading going to look like for Ashley?
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely are needing a little bit more. Sean and I have always dreamed of living in the country, and this house has been kind of like our midway, our introduction to home ownership. And, we're young still, right? So this made sense for us. But we are looking to move out to the country in the next year or so here, which I'm super excited about. I'm terrified because I've been a city kid my entire life, and so has he. But, this whole journey, that all started with a little pot of microgreens on the windowsill has just inspired us more than we ever thought it would. And, for Sean too, he's the kind of guy that I can't believe I can get him to sit down to a plate of like homegrown salad. Like he wasn't that guy when we started dating 7 years ago. And now he wants to get out into the country and raise chickens and goats and have a huge garden. And, it's a little bit of a bug. It gets in you and you just want to pursue it. So we're still trying to figure out what that's going to look like. We don't want to go very far from where we are right now. Mm-hmm. But, I think if we can find something that's, a couple acres and really like invest in our garden and, get some small livestock and, really get a true taste for what this life is like. I think that's kind of our long-term goal here.
Well, with your can-do attitude, I'm sure it's going to be pretty awesome, and you're going to be doing all kinds of really neat stuff, and you're going to have all kinds of really fun stuff to blog about, too. So I expect that blog to start, blowing up.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like, I wonder if blogging is still relevant in today's world, because, like, I love to consume content through podcasts and audiobooks and YouTube, but, I've always loved to write, so I figure there's going to be someone out there who wants to read it, so I guess I should get going on it.
I felt like the blog, for me, the blog is like the hub. It's like you can still do the videos, you can do the podcast, you can do, all the things, but you kind of have to have a hub for all that stuff to be kind of, going out from. So that's what I think of, the podcast is my biggest thing, but we write a lot of articles here too. And but the main thing is the podcast, but it's the hub for that, and then you can kind of go out from there. And videos, I see people doing the same thing with YouTube videos. You want a hub for those things where people can go there and check it out. But but there are those people who just love to read. I mean, sometimes it's a lot quicker just to reference a blog and read something really fast than it is to watch a whole video or listen to a whole podcast.
Oh, for sure. So. And I mean, I'm sure you probably experienced this too, but once you start getting the same question, over and over and over again from people, you're like, okay, I have to write a blog post about this because obviously people want to know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is still relevant. I think it's just one of those things that, like everything in life, it changes over time. But I'm really excited to share our journey, not just in homesteading, but also what it looks like to hunt for a property. Like we've been out kind of poking around at a few so far, and it's a different world. Rural life is a different world.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I live in town now, but I grew up in the country, and this was the first time when I moved here. It was the first time I'd ever lived in a town. So
oh my gosh, you got the city water. You've got
it was a big transition.
All the creature comforts.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the first time we didn't have to split firewood to heat our home and all kinds of stuff.
Gosh.
So it was a big change for me going the other way,
Absolutely.
But I kind of missed the old way, too.
Did you experience any kind of culture shock coming into the town from after living in the country?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, just such a, busier lifestyle and just, and it's ultimately what led to a lot of my troubles as far as health too, because it's so much easier just to go out and eat once you're in the city than when you're out in the country, you got to drive into town to go out and eat.
Absolutely.
So you didn't do it that much, but when it's just down the street, it's pretty easy to hop in your car and head down and get something to eat. And it's those kind of things that ultimately lead to bad health and some bad lifestyle choices.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely a culture shock though too. Yeah, just the busyness of life and things are just a lot different. But and having neighbors close by, it's kind of different too.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I think we might miss. Like we love our neighbors. So I think it's going to be kind of hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. I had somebody on the podcast, a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about how, it was like the other way around. They kind of moved out in the country thinking they would get away from neighbors, but they actually found they became closer to their neighbors.
Yes.
And I thought that was interesting. It was an interesting take on how that works.
That's awesome, though. Like, I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it is there is more sense of community out there, like we're really lucky that we have good neighbors here in the city because most people in the city can't stand their neighbors. Right. Like I know that's kind of the anomaly here, but, I think when you're out there and that, the nearest town is, 30 minutes away, you kind of have to rely on each other a little bit more. And I think that that's really wonderful. I'm actually looking forward to that.
A lot less people, but you end up with, it's a different kind of friendship. It's a deeper relationship you end up with your neighbors for sure. Yeah. Well, anything you want to say to folks who, maybe just they're thinking about going down this path, but they're not real sure.
Yeah, just try, just start, go to the library, get a few books, like just consume. Like when I decided I was going to start pursuing this lifestyle, which I guess at the time I didn't even realize I was doing. I was just going to start a garden. But I was just a sponge. Like I wanted every podcast that I could get my hands on. I wanted every book. I wanted to read every blog. My Pinterest was like a shrine to like chickens and plants. And I just think, we live in a time where there's so much information available. You just need to consume all you can. And also don't be afraid to fail. Like, people are like, oh, you have such a green thumb, blah, blah, blah. No, I don't. I have killed so many plants. I just don't post the dead ones, right? Like, you can't be afraid to try and keep good notes, try things, see what works, see what doesn't, and just never stop learning and just start where you are. There are little things that everybody can do right where they are right now.
That's great. Yep, that's been my anthem since the very beginning, so I'm glad to hear you repeating it. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, where can folks find out more about you and the things you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. My Instagram account, which is where I'm most active, I'm on there every day, multiple times a day, and that's just Townhouse Homestead. Mm-hmm. And then Facebook as well, which I'm not as active on, but we do have a page there as well, and that's also Townhouse Homestead. And then the website is just townhousehomestead.com. And I will get on those blog posts. I want to post a lot more this summer. Well, definitely. Yeah. When you move to the country, you're definitely going to have a lot more to talk about. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I look forward to maybe seeing some posts on looking for Country Home, too, because I think that could be really interesting. We have seen some interesting stuff. Like, it's going to be an adventure. So. Yeah, I hope you document all that. I'm really looking forward to reading some of that. So, great. Absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I really am glad you decided to come on. Oh, thank you so much. Well, I know you enjoyed that. I sure did. I just, like I said, I love talking to folks who, don't make excuses and they just get out there and do it. They say, you know what? I want to do this. I don't care what my situation is. I'm going to do it. So, Jeff, definitely check out Ashley's website and her Instagram account. I follow her on Instagram. She's always posting a lot of great stuff there. I'll also put links to those two things in the show notes, and I'll put a link to those Aero gardens, those hydroponic indoor gardens that she uses, and you can check those out if that's something maybe that you feel like you could use at your place to start your homesteading journey. So, let's just jump right into our homestead recipe of the week. This week's recipe is a fall garden jambalaya. It comes in from Angie from Marshland Acres, and this is some good stuff here, guys. I know you're going to like this one.
Hello, this is Angie from Marshland Acres. My recipe is fall garden jambalaya. You take 1 pound of ground sausage, 1 large onion diced brown. Add 2 to 3 potatoes that are chopped, 3 to 4 carrots that are sliced or chopped. Add that to the brown mixture. Cook until partially done. Add your extra large zucchini. I peel and dice. Add 1 small head of cabbage chopped. Cook until potatoes are completely done. I salt and pepper to taste. Top with shredded cheese. I serve with garlic bread. A little tip is I do cook it out on the grill. I use my large black roaster as until things cook down. It takes a lot of space. Enjoy. It's a family favorite.
Oh, that's got your mouth watering, don't it? Yeah, that's good stuff right there. If you want to send in your favorite homestead recipe, and folks, I do need some recipes, so send them in. Just kick open your phone and kick up the recording app in your phone and just tell us what that is. And, I'll play it on the podcast. Just say this is so-and-so from, if you've got a homestead name or a website name, you can throw that in there. You don't have to. And just say a recipe I like and want to share with you today is, and have at it. Try to keep your recordings between 1 to 5 minutes. And believe me, it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't do anything that's perfect, so you won't fit in here if it's perfect. So just send us your best shot. When you're satisfied with it, just email that audio clip to sthomestead@gmail.com, and I'll add it to a future episode. Look forward to getting those. I really, really enjoy these recipes and trying these new things out. And I know a lot of people have already told me they love the recipe segment. So keep them coming or it'll go away. We don't want it to go away. We need some great recipes. If you want to submit a question for the podcast, you can do so by sending that in to ask@smalltownhomestead.com, and be happy to answer a question briefly on the podcast as well. So just go ahead and send those in. And folks, I really appreciate all of you who support this podcast. You do that through joining our membership community. If you want to know more about that, head on over to smalltownhomestead.com, click on Become a Member in the menu there. I really appreciate those who shop through Amazon using our affiliate link. And really grateful for those of you who share this podcast with others. I mean, that's how this thing grows. It grows every week. It gets bigger and bigger every week. So I really appreciate that. If you want the show notes for this episode, they can be found at smalltownhomestead.com/119. And let me just leave you with this quote from Thomas Jefferson. He says, "No occupation is so delightful to me as the culture of the earth, and no culture comparable to that of a garden." It's good stuff there. Happy homesteading, folks, and God bless.
Thanks for listening. To see the show notes for this podcast or listen to other podcast episodes, go to smalltownhomestead.com. There you can also read our blog, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and take advantage of the many resources we make available to help you along in your homesteading journey. Please share this podcast and help us to carry out our mission of helping others to homestead today for a better tomorrow.